If you're wondering why farmers are so worried about money right now, it's because they just can't catch a break. It's not only that corn prices are too low to make a profit, it's that everything else costs way too much. One farmer said, "I never thought I'd lose money this fast." Across the Midwest, the fields are quiet. From Iowa to Indiana, whole harvests are still sitting in place because corn is now selling for under $3.50 a bushel. China has stopped buying. Shipments are being rejected in New Orleans, and deals worth millions have completely fallen apart. Farmers are left with two bad choices: let the corn rot or harvest it and lose money. On top of that, the USDA pulled back help for local food programs, cutting off supplies to schools, tribal groups, and food banks that depend on American farms. Meanwhile, Canada has jumped in and is now making big export deals with Japan, South Korea, and Europe. While American corn goes unsold, Canada is making huge profits. So, how did all of this fall apart so quickly? And how did Canada take the lead so fast? It started with tariffs. The White House placed huge fees on Chinese cargo ships, but the real hit landed on American farmers. Shipping prices through the Gulf of Mexico shot up by 25%, adding nearly $1 billion to export costs each year. Over on the Pacific, the price for containers jumped to $5,000 per unit in just 2 months, doubling what it cost during the pandemic. But shipping wasn't the only issue. In March 2025, a new rule from the Federal Grain Inspection Service raised the fee for testing pesticide levels by 40%. Now, every shipment had to pass stricter chemical checks before it could leave. If it didn't pass, it got turned around. Costs kept piling up while the grain barely moved. Traffic on the Mississippi River dropped 16% below the 5-year average. New Orleans became a floating warehouse with over 180 ships stuck, waiting for containers and paperwork. Corn sat in the rain at the dock going bad, while farmers watched their profits melt away. Each week of delay meant a loss of about 27 cents per bushel. That added up fast across the Midwest. At the same time, global buyers started asking for more. Corn now had to be clean, eco-friendly, and traceable. In February, Mexico banned GMO corn. Suddenly, other buyers did the same. This shocked the U.S., where over 90% of cornfields grow genetically modified crops. Just like that, American corn was no longer welcome. Canada, however, was ready. Their Prairie Trace system tracks corn from seed to port using blockchain. It also cuts carbon emissions and is known for its purity. This gave Canada a major advantage. Within weeks, they signed deals worth billions with Japan, South Korea, and the EU. The impact hit hard. Corn prices in the Midwest dropped to $3.45 a bushel, the lowest since 2016. But in Canada, Manitoba corn was selling for $4.20 because of its green certification. Buyers weren't willing to wait for the U.S. to catch up. The change was obvious. Contracts with U.S. farmers were canceled. Barges were left unused. Silos stayed full. Buyers were looking north. In New Orleans, America's top spot in global grain trade was fading. The world had already moved on. They weren't just paying more for Canadian corn because of price, they were paying for peace of mind. Every Canadian shipment checked all the new boxes: non-GMO, traceable, clean. Even the ethanol industry, once a lifeline for corn, began to fall apart. The U.S. Energy Information Administration reported ethanol plants in the Midwest running at just under 88% capacity. 25 plants shut down, and over 1 billion gallons of production sat idle. At Valero's Nebraska plant, more than 100 night shift workers were laid off. With fewer buyers and falling demand, rural communities were being pushed to the edge. From the farms of Iowa to the factories in Illinois and Nebraska, the entire corn economy was starting to fall apart. Corn was no longer valuable. It had become a burden. Meanwhile, Canada kept building its lead, one shipment at a time. Each load came with proof, verified with blockchain, certified for low carbon, and clean of harmful chemicals. It was a simple plan: show purity and earn trust. That trust brought higher prices. A report in June 2025 showed Canadian corn selling for as much as $1.87 above the Chicago market price. Even new crops were getting 18% more than U.S. corn. Feed mills across Europe and Asia were happy to pay the extra cost because they trusted the quality. In March, Canada and South Korea signed a deal allowing Canadian organic grain to skip extra inspections. Ontario co-ops quickly signed 5-year supply contracts. Saskatchewan took advantage too. Thanks to their weak currency and trade tensions, they won markets in Japan and the Netherlands. U.S. corn, hit with 25% tariffs, was left behind. Canada's government didn't just watch, they helped. Export development. Canada offered insurance and covered costs to keep their emissions low. These tools weren't hidden. They were promoted as reasons to choose Canada. Railways were rerouted too. Trains from Vancouver reached deep into the U.S. Midwest, carrying Canadian grain at cheaper prices on return trips from Asia. That same week, Canada finished its big shipping deal. The USDA reported a 14% drop in grain vessel bookings from U.S. Gulf ports. Exports were down, contracts were shrinking, and American farmers were hearing silence from buyers. It wasn't just that Canada took business. They built a brand, clean, reliable, transparent. It wasn't only about growing the corn, it was about how it was grown, tracked, and delivered. As global trade turned greener, the first to adapt won. While U.S. farmers struggle with overflowing storage and dropping prices, order books in Toronto kept growing. American corn once fed the world. Now, it's being pushed aside. This rejection of U.S. shipments is a turning point. A system that once ruled the market is now on shaky ground, and it's already spreading. Right, so soybeans are next. 92% of U.S. soybeans are also GMO. That's enough for Seed Europe to remove them from its green supply list. Dairy will feel it soon too. As feed prices rise and clean alternatives win, small farms won't survive. Beef won't escape either. Meat raised on high-emission corn is now a liability. Australia and Canada have promised net zero beef by 2030. They're locking in buyers before the U.S. can catch up. Washington now has two options. The first is reform. Drop the trade tariffs, give farmers access to greener tools, report carbon scores, and make traceability standard across the country. It's politically tough, but it's the only real path back to global trust. The second is to stay the course, keep raising trade walls, stick with outdated inspection rules, and use subsidies to cover losses. That road leads back to the collapse we already saw in the old factory towns. This time, the price in agriculture would be even higher. Canada wouldn't just make more sales. It would own the premium market and put its label on dinner tables across the globe. The shift is already happening. Contracts, ships, and money are heading north. While American farmers wait for help, Canada is clocking new deals by the hour. So, how long before Washington decides to fix the problem? Or will the rural economy keep falling behind? Tell us what you think in the comments, and we'll catch you in the next one.